dowels and a variety of...
And assume, for the purposes of the hypothetical, that no blood is on her clothing below her chest. Based on your training and expertise and analysis of this case and the hypothetical, is this consistent with Jennifer being on her knees?
Yes, it.
Speculation assumes facts not evidence.
Overruled.
Yes,
Dr.
it is.
Answer. Could you please explain why?
The physical evidence supports it.
Could you tell us how that is?
She received a lot of gunshot wounds on her chest, her neck, and if she was upright for any amount of time, she would be bleeding down. There would definitely be blood going down her body from those wounds. She had no blood below her chest at the scene. I was at the scene. I saw the photographs. There was no blood anywhere else in the kitchen except for blood on the stove above and to the left of her head.
Now, Dr. Liu, assume further, for the purposes of this hypothetical, that a piece of what is purported to be the cabinet behind Jennifer in the hypothetical was found in her hair. Assume further that there is a piece of cabinet that matches the piece found in her hair that was missing from the cabinet behind her. Assume for the purposes of the hypothetical that it was only evident upon moving Jennifer's body. Assume further that a projectile was recovered from under the carpet once Jennifer's body was moved. Assume further that Jennifer sustained an injury as described in wound number 19, wound L. Based on your training and expertise and analysis of the hypothetical, is that wound consistent with a ricochet from the cabinet?
It is consistent with the bullet striking the cabinet, taking off that piece that was found in her hair, and then bouncing off and striking her right upper back.
Now, Dr. Liu, assume further, for the purposes of this hypothetical, that the victim sustained 5 perforating injuries to her left wrist. Assume further the projectiles enter the chest as shown in photos 7, 8, 9, and 10. Assume further that a bruise was found on the left inner upper arm that matched 2 of the wounds in the chest, and that she had stippling on the left upper arm, left forearm, and left hand. Based on your training and expertise and analysis of the hypothetical, are those facts consistent with the injuries to the wrist being defensive injuries?
Yes, let me explain what defensive injuries are.
Please do.
When a victim is trying to protect himself or herself from an attacker, they instinctively may put up their hands and their arms to protect themselves. So in this case, with the 5 wounds on her left forearm, that would be consistent with her holding her hand in a way to protect her upper body.
Dr. Liu, based on your training, experience, and expertise within a reasonable degree of medical certainty, do you have an opinion as to the cause of death in this case?
Yes, I do.
Could you please tell us what the cause of death was?
The cause of death was gunshot wounds.
And based on your training, experience, and expertise, do you have an opinion on the manner of death?
Yes, the manner of death is homicide.
Thank you. I have no further questions.
Ladies and gentlemen, at this time we will be taking our lunch break. Please remember not to come to any formed opinions. Don't speak to anyone. Do not allow anybody to speak to you about this case, even amongst yourselves. There will be no outside research, no Facebooking, no connection with any media coverage of this case. It is presently 12:30. I will ask that you be back at 1:30 to resume our proceedings. Please follow all rules and regulations. Leave your notepads behind. Thank you.
Please rise.
Please be seated, everybody. Dr. Liu, you are still technically on the stand during our lunch break. You know what that means. You may not speak to anybody about your testimony. Obviously, you could speak to anybody regarding scheduling. I will ask that you be back at 1:25 so that we can finish up your testimony. Thank you.
Judge, can we leave that demonstrative aid there so I could use it for my cross?
Yes, you may.
Judge, I have just one thing to bring up.
Sure.
And that is
Dr.
that,
Liu, you're welcome to go. Thank you. Thank you.
I'm going to wait, or?
No. Unless it's of a nature where you don't want her to
Not
go.
at all.
Okay.
Judge, at one point, earlier during the trial, Mr. Padilla left the courtroom, and I brought it to the court's attention to make sure that there wasn't a problem with Mr. Padilla leaving. I believe Mr. Dunn did it, and Mr. Zangane indicated that he was lead counsel and he was here, and it was totally fine. However, Judge, in the last few minutes of Dr. Liu's direct examination, Mr. Zangane left the courtroom. And while I understand that Mr. Padilla might be handling this particular witness in light of his representation that he is lead counsel and that we are discussing the medical examiner, I wanted to just put that on the record to make sure that there was no issues later, that the person that's represented as lead counsel was not in the room.
Judge, it's not
That's
my
all.
witness. Where I was handling matters related to this case.
Please state your full name for the record. And your birthday.
March 23rd, 1982.
Highest level of education. Are you presently under the influence of any illegal drugs or alcohol?
No, Your Honor.
Have you ever been treated for mental illness?
No, Your Honor.
Mr. Medina, first will you confirm for me that you have been present throughout the proceedings in Dr. Liu's testimony this
Yes,
morning?
Your Honor.
Sir, you're aware that your attorney, Mr. Zagane, left the courtroom for a brief time during the direct testimony of Dr. Liu. Are you aware of that? And are you in agreement with the fact that he was not present in court?
Yes, Your Honor.
Your other two attorneys were present in court, is that correct?
Yes, Your Honor.
Including Mr. Padilla, who will be cross-examining this witness?
Yes, Your Honor.
And are you in agreement with your attorney's strategy up to this point?
Yes, Your Honor.
Has anybody forced or coerced you to
No,
make
Your
this
Honor.
announcement to the court?
No, Your Honor.
And are you freely and voluntarily making this announcement to the court? Thank you, sir. You may be seated. Anything else from the state? From the defense?
Yes, Judge. There were 3 motions in limine filed by the prosecution